Hey, where are you? I've been waiting for you. We promised to submit the marriage registration today, didn't we? My fiancé Stalin hadn't shown up at the city hall, even though 30 minutes had passed since the agreed upon time. Growing impatient, I decided to call him. Seriously? You've been waiting this whole time. The marriage thing was a lie. I'm not marrying you. Wait, what? You're joking, right? We had decided to register our marriage today. I had circled the date on the calendar in red and counted down the days, eagerly awaiting this moment. But my innocent hopes were mercilessly shattered by none other than Stalin himself. Suddenly, the call switched to a video call. On the screen, I saw Stalin's mischievous, deliberately cruel grin. In the background, his co-workers from the same department were laughing uproariously. To my shock, among them was Regina, who I thought was my best friend. Someone as plain as you should be happy you even got to dream about marriage. I'm marrying Regina. You're no longer needed. It was only now that I realized everything had been orchestrated from the start. Fine, I'll break up with you. Despite trembling with the bitterness of betrayal by two people I had trusted, I managed to force out those words. But in that moment, I secretly vowed to take revenge on everyone who had mocked me. My name is Jasmine. I've always been shy and reluctant to engage with others, spending much of my childhood alone. Plain, quiet, unremarkable. That's how people always described me negatively, without fail. Even as an adult, my life was a peaceful yet uneventful routine of commuting between home and work. I had little experience talking to men, let alone dating, so the idea of marriage seemed like a far-off dream. However, a turning point came one day. Regina, one of the few friends I had from school, introduced me to a man. His name was Stalin, and apparently, he was a co-worker of Regina's. Ever since he spotted you in town, he's been head over heels for you. Head over heels for me. I couldn't believe it. Compared to Regina, I was far more ordinary and not particularly fashionable. It had to be some kind of mistake. Reluctantly, I agreed to meet him at Regina's insistence. Though I was initially wary, Stalin made a decent first impression. Maybe it was because Regina told me he was just as shy in relationships and had struggled to confess his feelings on his own. Thanks to Regina's mediation, I began dating Stalin with marriage in mind. The lease on my current place is about to expire. If you'd like, why don't we move in together? Shortly after our relationship began, I moved in with him. Looking back, I realize how reckless it was to start living together so soon after dating. But I was so swept up in the excitement of having my first boyfriend that I agreed without hesitation. However, once we began living together, his peculiar and troubling behavior started to surface. Hey, why isn't the thing I asked you to do done? This morning, Stalin's angry voice echoed through the house at an ungodly hour. Apparently, he was furious that his dress shirt wasn't ironed properly. I'm sorry, I was busy with work yesterday. I meant to do it, but I postponed it and completely forgot. Can you wear something else today? I had been working late due to a particularly busy period at my job. Even though I rushed home to prepare dinner, I forgot to iron Stalin's clothes. There were other shirts in the closet. I suggested he wear one of those, but Stalin's mood visibly soured. What? I plan to wear that shirt today. Just iron it now. Or you saying I should go out wearing a wrinkled shirt, but I don't have time. I still need to get ready. And if I start ironing now, I'll be late for work. That's not my problem. Isn't housework your responsibility? Do it right? Oh, and I'm starving, so make me breakfast first. Honestly, you're so useless. Stalin's demands were utterly self-centered, showing no consideration for me as his partner. He was always like this, barking orders at me as if I were his servant or maid, rather than his girlfriend. But desperate not to be disliked by my first boyfriend, I endured this treatment without complaint. One day, Stalin mentioned that he wanted to eat my home-cooked meals again after a long time. Lately, Stalin had been coming home late, claiming work was keeping him busy, and he rarely ate dinner at home. Hearing this, I was genuinely happy. "I'll put my heart into making something special," I said. "Yeah, I'll come home early tonight," he replied, excited by the rare semblance of a normal, loving conversation between us. I began planning what to cook. I hurried to finish work, stopped by the supermarket on my way home, and bought a variety of ingredients. "I'll make all of Stalin's favorite dishes. He'll love it." Since moving in together, our hearts had grown increasingly distant. I hoped that tonight might mark the start of a return to how things used to be. As I cooked, I held on to that hope. Where could he be? He's awfully late. Did work run over time? After finishing the meal, I waited for him to return. He had promised to come home early, but by 9 p.m., he still wasn't back. The carefully prepared dinner on the table had long gone cold. Worried he might have been in an accident, I called his phone repeatedly, but he didn't pick up. As I sat in our room, debating whether to contact the police, Stalin finally called. "Hello, Stalin, where are you right now?" The answer that came back was unbelievable. "Huh, I'm out drinking with my coworkers." "Drinking? But you said you wanted to eat my cooking tonight and would come home early." "They invited me out at the last minute. What was I supposed to do?" He said this without the slightest hint of remorse. His attitude made it clear he didn't feel even slightly at fault. "I can eat your cooking any time. Of course, I'll prioritize a night out. A man's got obligations you wouldn't understand." Later, with that, he abruptly ended the call after saying everything he wanted. From then on, he started going out drinking without notice more and more often. He frequently asked for extra money, claiming it was for important social obligations. We had agreed when we moved in together to split the living expenses evenly, but Stalin began shirking even that responsibility. "I have to spend money on socializing. You could at least cover the living costs. Not that someone like you, with no friends or social life, would understand. You should be grateful I'm with you. No one else would put up with a woman like you." By this point, he no longer even tried to hide his condescending attitude toward me. Could I really marry someone like this? But then again, Stalin might be right. Who else would date someone as lonely and plain as me? That thought made me unable to argue back, no matter how unreasonable his behavior was. One day, my doubts about Stalin grew even stronger. Honestly, why does he leave his clothes lying around like this? How can someone be so messy? As Stalin took a bath after returning home, I picked up the clothes he had carelessly thrown on the floor. He had a habit of leaving his clothes wherever he happened to take them off. If I didn't pick up after him, the apartment would quickly turn into a disaster zone. I was used to cleaning up his messes by now. As I gathered his clothes to do laundry, I noticed something strange. "What's this smell?" It wasn't the scent of detergent or body odor. It was an unpleasantly strong fragrance. It smelled like women's perfume, and the scent was coming from the clothes Stalin had just taken off. "What's going on here?" As I examined his shirt closely, I found lipstick stains on the collar. Is he cheating? The clear evidence of contact with another woman drained the blood from my face. Summoning my courage, I confronted Stalin as he emerged from the bathroom. "What? Someone must have bumped into me on the train, and that's how the lipstick got there." "What are you accusing me of?" Stalin gave a vague smile, insisting he wasn't cheating. But there's the perfume, too. Everyone wears perfume. The scent must have transferred from somewhere. What's your problem? Do you even have proof? No, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have questioned you like that. When I apologized, he got irritated, calling me terrible for doubting him. He stormed out of the apartment in anger, slamming the door behind him. Since I didn't have definitive proof, I couldn't press the issue any further, but my instincts told me something was wrong. I think Stalin might be cheating on me. At a loss, I called my friend Regina and told her everything about Stalin. I didn't hold back, sharing all the selfish ways he'd treated me and the signs of another woman in his life. You're being too paranoid. You need to loosen up a little. Regina brushed off my concerns, advising me not to be so quick to suspect a man over trivial things. But is it really okay for me to keep dating Stalin? I'm so unsure. You're so timid. If you try harder, he will surely change. To be loved, Jasmine, you need to make more effort. She told me to endure everything in silence, no matter what he said. Jasmine, you're so naive. Women should just quietly obey their men. Okay, I understand. I'll try my best, as you said, Regina. Reluctantly, I accepted Regina's advice. From then on, I stopped arguing and complied with whatever Stalin demanded. On the surface, our days seemed peaceful, but that peace came at the cost of my constant efforts to avoid making Stalin angry. No matter how tired I was from work, I would come home and tiptoe around Stalin's mood, obeying his unreasonable commands without complaint. It's like I'm his slave. The cohabitation I had started with so much hope in my first relationship had now become a living hell. However, perhaps because of all my endurance, one day Stalin brought up the idea of marriage. We should go ahead and register our marriage. When do you think would be a good date? I was over the moon with joy, never expecting those words from Stalin. All the suffering I endured hadn't been in vain. Regina was right, silently bearing it was the right choice. Stalin and I decided to register our marriage. 10 days later, I marked the date on the calendar with a red pen and eagerly counted down the days. But my innocent, hopeful heart was about to be shattered by none other than Stalin himself. On the day of our planned marriage registration, we arranged to meet in front of the local government office. I waited, trying to contain my excitement. I still couldn't believe someone like me, who had never been close to romance, was about to get married. I had some worries about our life together, but as Regina said, Stalin would surely change after we were married. I clung to that hopeful thought, but Stalin didn't show up at the agreed time. I wondered if he had gotten the date wrong, but we had counted down the days together so many times. There was no way I could have made a mistake. 30 minutes past the appointed time, I had grown tired of waiting and decided to call Stalin. Hey, where are you? I've been waiting in front of the office. Wait, seriously? You've been waiting this whole time. The marriage thing was a lie. I'm not marrying you. Wait, what? You're joking, right? When I asked again, the call suddenly switched to a video call. On the screen, Stalin's face appeared, wearing a smug and malicious grin. In the background, his coworkers from the same department were roaring with laughter. And there, among them, was someone I thought was my best friend Regina. What is this? Where are you all? We're in Hawaii, taking some paid leave to enjoy a vacation with the whole department. Do you even know what day it is today? And Hawaii? You never told me anything about this. Shut up already. You're useless to me now. Let's break up. Wait, hold on. At least explain. Maybe even someone as clueless as you can figure it out if I show you this. Look, what he showed me was a ring sparkling on Regina's left ring finger. Thanks to you, I was able to save a lot of money during our cohabitation. That let me buy Regina a nice ring. No premarital relations. I want to cherish Jasmine. You said, ha, you totally fell for it. You were just a housekeeper and a cash cow for us. According to Stalin and Regina, our relationship had been a lie from the beginning, a scheme to save money for their wedding. Sure, Stalin had said from the start that we should avoid premarital relations, and I had genuinely believed it was out of kindness and respect for me. But he never intended to have a serious relationship with me, let alone marry me. He selfishly used me as a convenient housekeeper, made me pay for living expenses, and quietly saved up money for his wedding with Regina. You should be grateful you even got to dream about marriage, being the dull woman you are. It was hard putting up with an ugly girl like you every day, even for money. Laughter erupted again from his coworkers in the background. How could she not notice? Talk about being ridiculously naive. Even without their cruel words, the realization that my so-called friend had betrayed me and that I had loved such a scumbag was unbearable. After everything that had happened, my feelings for Stalin evaporated in an instant. I understand. I'll break up with you. In a trembling voice, I managed to force out those words. Good, that makes things easier. By then, try finding a guy who matches your level. Though let's be real, there isn't anyone who'd want a boring woman like you. With one last stab of cruel words, Stalin hung up the call. 2 days later, after returning from their vacation, Stalin and the others were suddenly summoned to the CEO's office. The entire group who had gone to Hawaii stood there, trembling with fear about what they might be told. Among them, Stalin and Regina looked particularly uneasy, more so than the rest. They had noticed me standing next to the CEO. "Why are you here?" Stalin asked, his voice shaking. It wasn't me who answered, but the CEO. "Jasmine is my daughter." At that revelation, everyone froze in shock. "Your daughter. But her last name is different." As Stalin said, "My father and I have different last names. But that's because my parents divorced when I was very young. Even after their divorce, I stayed in touch with my father, and we still meet regularly for meals even now that I'm an adult." Of course, I had told my father about Stalin, but I deliberately kept the fact that my father is the president of the company a secret. I thought Stalin might become overly conscious of it and act differently if he knew. "Dad, take a look at this." I had recorded the humiliating video call from the other day and showed it to my father. The video captured the faces of everyone in the department who had been enjoying their vacation in Hawaii. As he watched their mocking laughter and sneering expressions directed at me, my father's face grew somber. "You all don't need to come in starting tomorrow. Consider yourselves fired." What? No way. My father's company had been experiencing rising sales in recent years, but was also considering some staff reductions. According to HR, Stalin's department had a reputation for poor behavior, both internally and externally. However, they hadn't found a concrete reason to dismiss the entire group until now. Stalin's betrayal of me provided the perfect excuse to shut down the entire department. All of you being in the same department makes this convenient. This is the price you pay for mocking my daughter. My father announced that everyone would face dismissal or an equivalent penalty. No one could have guessed that the plain woman they had ridiculed was the CEO's daughter. Now aware of the gravity of their actions, they all froze in fear. "This has nothing to do with me. I wasn't involved." Regina was the first to speak, desperately denying her involvement. It was clear she was trying to save herself by throwing Stalin under the bus. "You were the one who suggested it in the first place." Stalin snapped back, hurling the ring he had placed on Regina's finger onto the floor. If you hadn't egged me on, I wouldn't have done something so stupid. Take responsibility. Stalin then shifted the blame to their other colleagues, insisting that they were at fault. Chaos ensued as everyone began shouting that they weren't responsible, eventually escalating into a physical fight. The camaraderie they had displayed in Hawaii quickly disintegrated into this ugly spectacle, all because the foundation of their relationship was built on looking down on someone weaker. Watching the scene unfold in his office, my father sighed deeply. "You all seem to enjoy physical activity," he said. "Fine, I'll let you avoid outright dismissal. I've just remembered a perfect job for you." Hearing this, the group stopped fighting and breathed a sigh of relief. But the perfect job turned out to be a nightmare. Everyone from Stalin's department was sent, under the guise of training, to a grueling mining site in South Africa. They were tasked with extracting minerals the company dealt with, requiring them to endure extreme physical labor. Before their departure, my father told them they were free to quit at any time, but the work was so demanding that giving up seemed impossible. A month later, I received a call from Stalin, begging for help. I regretted not blocking his number, but reluctantly answered. Stalin explained that for confidentiality reasons, their smartphones had been confiscated on site. He had sneaked out of the dormitory to find a public phone, but since there were so few in the area, it had taken him 5 days of walking through the night to locate one. "Why am I going through this? What did I do to deserve this?" he asked. His repeated complaints didn't stir even a shred of sympathy within me. If anything, after remembering all the things he had done to me, I thought this punishment was still far too lenient. Apparently, he was at least being provided with adequate meals and sleep. However, whenever he complained about the grueling nature of the work, the local staff would scold him in their native language, asking what he had to complain about. "I can't communicate with anyone. The food doesn't suit me. The beds in the dorm are moldy. I hate this place. You've got to talk to your dad for me." It seemed that everyone at the mining site was utterly demoralized. Regina, in particular, though spared from manual labor, had been assigned to cook for the workers. Preparing 3 meals a day for over 100 people had her constantly in tears, begging to return home. "Have you reflected on your actions enough?" I asked. "Yes, absolutely. I feel terrible about everything. If I can just return home, I'll do whatever you want." "I see. All right then, I'll talk to my father about letting you come back." "Really? Jasmine, you're a lifesaver." Tears streaming down his face, Stalin kept thanking and apologizing profusely. The mining site seemed to have broken him completely. He was no longer the arrogant, overbearing man I used to know. Some time later, Stalin and the others were finally permitted to return home. Emaciated and exhausted, they arrived back in the U.S., too drained to even protest to the CEO. Regina, who once prided herself on her beautifully maintained long hair, now had hair damaged by dust and grime. Her skin was rough, and she looked as though she had aged a decade. "Good job on completing your training," my father said warmly, welcoming them back. He even offered them a luxurious meal and hot showers to help them recover. Delighted by the warm reception, they quickly forgot about why they had been sent to South Africa in the first place and began celebrating as if nothing had happened. "Now that you're all refreshed, Stalin, I have a present for you," my father said. "A present? For me?" Feeling emboldened by the hospitable treatment, Stalin leaned forward eagerly to hear what my father had to say. My father took out his smartphone and began making a call. Stalin watched him expectantly, his eyes sparkling with anticipation. Was it money? Or maybe something even better? After all, they had endured such harsh training. A reward seemed only fair. 20 minutes later, while the group was still happily drinking and laughing, several people arrived. As they entered the room, everyone froze in shock. It was the police. The officers approached Stalin and promptly restrained him. What the hell? What's going on? What did I do? Stalin struggled against them, but with officers on either side holding him tightly, he couldn't move, let alone escape. Stalin, confused and unable to grasp the situation, watched as my father approached him and coldly spoke. By the way, I forgot to mention, I reported you to the police for marriage fraud. What? Why? I thought you forgave me. Normally, proving a case of marriage fraud is difficult, but Stalin himself had left an abundance of evidence video recordings showing his intention to deceive me from the very beginning. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't do anything. This is a false arrest. Get me a lawyer. Desperately denying the allegations, Stalin found himself faced with an unexpected adversary. It's true, he planned to deceive Jasmine from the start. We just got caught up in it. Isn't that right? His colleagues, each eager to distance themselves, unanimously pinned the blame on Stalin. That's right. This man is the culprit, Regina added, throwing Stalin under the bus to save herself. You'll regret this. I won't forgive any of you, Stalin shouted, his face turning red with rage at their betrayal. But no amount of anger could save him now. Spewing curses, he was led away by the police. Ultimately, he was convicted of marriage fraud. Since it was his first offense, his sentence was relatively short, but he still served time in prison. As for Regina and the others, they were demoted to the company's infamous exile division, a dead-end department, and all eventually resigned voluntarily. After quitting, Regina reportedly attempted to find another job, but bad rumors about her had spread, and no reputable company would take her. She reluctantly took a job in nightlife to make ends meet. But the once beautiful Regina had lost her charm after the harsh life in South Africa. Unpopular and mocked as a washed-up old lady by the younger women at her workplace, she was barely making it. She often complained to others that her downfall was all my fault, but no one paid her any attention. After all, it was her own scheming alongside Stalin that had led her here. She would likely continue blaming me, living at the bottom of society, without ever changing her ways. As for me, I left a company I had been working for and became a secretary for my father. I buried myself in work, trying to forget the painful events of the past. My father occasionally asked me if there was anyone I was interested in, but I always told him I'd had enough of men. Still, through his introduction, I eventually met someone. He was an up-and-coming star at the Seattle branch, highly regarded within the company as a future leader. I can vouch for his character. He's a good man, my father assured me. Reluctantly, I agreed to go out for meals and spend time with him on weekends. As my father had said, he was an earnest man with a straightforward, genuine personality. Slowly, I found myself drawn to him, but soon, I began to be haunted by a trauma. Someone as plain as you will never be wanted by anyone. Those cruel words from Stalin echoed in my mind, surfacing again and again. Noticing my reluctance to pursue the relationship, he gently asked if I would share what was bothering me. Summoning my courage, I confessed that I had been deceived by a man in the past. He listened and showed understanding, saying it was only natural for me to be wary of men after such an experience. Then he told me he would wait as long as it took for my heart to heal. Why would someone like him be so kind to me? The self-esteem that Stalin had shattered so thoroughly made me doubt his kindness. But he stayed true to his word, patiently waiting until I could overcome my trauma. My peaceful relationship with him continued, and eventually, I became certain that he was someone I could trust. I began to think about marriage, and decided to propose to him myself. He graciously accepted my proposal, and we decided to get married. A year after our wedding, we were blessed with twins, and now we are living a happy life together. My father, absolutely smitten with his first grandchildren, often visits our home and helps take care of them. The stern expression he usually wears at work melts into a gentle smile whenever he's with the babies. Seeing him like that fills my heart with warmth and joy. Even after giving birth, I've continued working, balancing my job with household chores and raising the children alongside my husband. He always says, "We're both working, so let's support each other and make this work," and I'm endlessly grateful for his partnership. Not once did Stalin ever say anything like that during the time we lived together. Though the pain of being betrayed by Stalin and Regina still lingers, I know I can't dwell on it forever. I've resolved to turn over a new leaf and live a bright and joyful life with my new family.
He's always in a bad mood, so just ignore him. Even when I consult Ian about Alan, he never takes it seriously. It's been 6 months since I remarried Ian, and Alan has started ignoring me and even stopped having meals with us. Alan, at least have some milk, please? Just leave me alone. His voice finally reached me, and it deeply pierced my heart. I don't know how to deal with him. However, one day when I was away overnight, Alan contacted me. "Come back home." As soon as I responded to his call and returned home, Alan forcibly dragged me into the attic. Alan's expression was so severe that it sent chills down my spine. I couldn't help but feel terrified of his forceful behavior. What on earth is going on? It's dark and scary. Where is Lily? Where is she? I couldn't get my voice out, and my breathing naturally became labored. "Shoo!" Alan's warning made me hold my breath. But the real fear was yet to come. I'm Kara, 43 years old. I'm a single mother with a 12-year-old daughter. I divorced my ex-husband about 10 years ago due to personality conflicts. I ended up being treated like a housekeeper by my in-laws. Moreover, they tried to overpower me physically, so I couldn't stand it and ran away with my daughter, Lily. Lily was just 2 years old, and I had to protect her all by myself. Bearing that pressure, I have worked hard all these years. Of course, I worked, and I tried to make sure Lily didn't feel lonely. And Lily has grown into a very energetic girl. One day, when she was in 6th grade, she suddenly asked, "Hey Mom, do you have anyone you like?" Lately, she often talks about how handsome Kevin from her class is, and I found it quite adorable. I never thought I would be dragged into her girl talk. "Really? You don't have anyone you like?" "Mom, you're beautiful, so you must be popular. Why not remarry?" "I want a kind dad and a handsome big brother." It must be the influence of shoujo manga. But surprisingly, she was quite serious, and she kept encouraging me to date and remarry. As Lily became less dependent on me, I thought maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea. Then, with a light heart, I attended a singles event and met a man I connected with on the first try. His name is Ian, 45 years old. A refreshing man who looks younger than his age, often seen wearing a white polo shirt. He had been through a similar situation, having been divorced with an 8-year-old son. "My son also encouraged me to consider remarriage. I've lived for my child for a long time, but maybe it's time to find my own happiness too." Yes. It wasn't a fiery love like in my younger days, but a gentle romance like the warmth of a spring day. Ian's kindness made my heart flutter for the first time in a long while. I was a bit giddy, but there was one thing I couldn't help but worry about. Ian's son, Alan. With remarriage in mind, we had been deepening our bond early on, including the children. "Alan, what do you want to eat? Do you like hamburgers?" Even when the four of us went to a restaurant, Alan always seemed bored. Whatever. I wondered if Alan was really supporting the remarriage with such an attitude. He wouldn't talk to me, and when our eyes met, he would just glare at me. According to Ian, he's just shy. Indeed, when Lily tries to open up to Alan, I occasionally see a cute, embarrassed smile. A quiet and cool little brother isn't bad. Alan might be its under a dot. I've heard from my mom friends that boys often don't talk to their parents at home, so maybe it's normal for adolescents. While struggling with how to handle it, spending time together gradually helped us get closer. Around that time, Lily cheerfully asked Alan, "Hey Alan, Ian and my mom get along well, don't you think they should get married?" I was surprised by her sudden question, but I was curious about his reaction. "Oh, yeah. If it's Kara, then it's fine. Whatever." He replied indifferently, but he glanced at me and gave a small smile. A warm joy surged from the center of my being. Finally, I was acknowledged by Alan. I was truly happy from the bottom of my heart. After that, everything went smoothly, and we got married, starting a new life as a family of four. At Ian's request, we rented a house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, far from the city center. Having lived in the city until now, it was a bit inconvenient, but the house with a large yard and a bright living room seemed like a symbol of a happy family and wasn't bad at all. Just as I was concerned about Alan, Ian gently cared for Lily. "Is today's homework math drills?" "Oh, fractions? I'm really good at mathematics." After dinner, Ian helped with her studies. As the weekend approached, "Lily, is there anywhere you want to go?" he would ask. I understood the feeling of being more considerate to a stepchild than to a biological one. However, it seemed that Alan wasn't too happy with this situation. It was as if his dad was suddenly taken away by her. I tried to think of Alan and Lily equally, so I subtly mentioned it to Ian in our bedroom. "Thank you for always being kind to Lily." "Because I'm her dad. I always wanted a daughter. Girls are just so cute. They're honest and adorable, really adorable." He seemed to be trying hard to be a dad. "But, because you're always giving Lily attention, Alan seems a bit lonely, doesn't he?" When I brought up the main issue, Ian laughed lightly. "Alan? He's always grumpy, so I can't tell. Does he even have feelings?" "Oh, maybe grumpiness is a feeling?" "Well, I don't know what he's thinking. Just leave him be. Don't worry about it." "Huh?" It felt different from just favoring a stepchild. "Oh, by the way, Lily wants to go to an amusement park on the next holiday. Can you book the tickets?" An indescribable sense of discomfort spread in my chest. Was he desperately trying to be liked by Lily? In other words, he was trying to cherish the family. "Tickets are $100 per person? Wow, that's expensive. But hey, family smiles are priceless, right?" It seemed he had no hesitation in spending $100 for Lily. Speaking of which, when we first started living together, Alan's shoes were worn out and the heels were crushed. When I suggested buying new ones, he refused once with a whatever, so he must have really liked them. But when I half forced him to the shoe store, he looked around with interest and chose new shoes. Alan's shoes cost $39. When I mentioned it to Ian in casual conversation, he slightly furrowed his brows. "What? That's expensive for kids' shoes." Everyone has their values, but I felt Ian was a bit too dismissive of Alan. There was one more thing that bothered me about Ian. Hello? Hey, I'm working late today. Around 4 p.m., Ian called cheerfully while at work. His workplace is a factory, and he usually works from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays. Sometimes, he has to start early, work late, or even work on weekends. Most of the time, he doesn't know about these schedule changes until the last minute, and he lets me know on the same day. So, that's the case. Thanks for your hard work. Will it be another late night? Yeah, it might be a late night. I might even have to pull an all-nighter. It's really tough. The deadlines are always tight, and the clients often make unreasonable demands, so the manufacturing job seems really hard. Yet, his voice always sounds cheerful. Tell Lily I'm sorry I can't help with her homework. Is he only worried about Lily? I felt a mix of emotions again. Overtime and weekend work have been a part of his life even before we got married. Now, Alan is quiet, but I heard that when he was younger, he would sometimes wander off when Ian wasn't home, and kind strangers would take care of him. So, right after we got married, Ian felt relieved. Kara, it's great that your job doesn't have overtime. It's really helpful having Mom at home. This way, we won't get complaints from the neighbors or child services anymore. What a relief! At that time, I didn't think much about it, but looking back, I realize he wasn't happy about avoiding making Alan feel lonely. Ian himself was relieved that he wouldn't be criticized by others anymore. He's definitely not like my ex-husband, who was hot-tempered. He's always smiling and is a gentle person who enjoys conversation. But the complicated feelings inside me remain unresolved. I've talked to my mom friends about it, but they just laughed and said, "Dads are like that." My mom friends then went on to share their complaints about their husbands, competing for the title of the worst husband. Listening to their stories, I thought Ian isn't that bad, but even after venting or hearing about other terrible husbands, my complex feelings didn't disappear. I'm home. Even on the days Ian tells me he'll be working late into the night, he often comes home on time. Huh? Did the overtime get canceled? Yeah. For some reason, when he works late into the night or early morning, he's in a great mood, but when he comes home without working overtime, he's in a bad mood. Isn't it usually the opposite? I wondered but couldn't say anything when Ian was in a bad mood. While I'm concerned about Ian, another problem arises. Alan has started showing a rebellious attitude. When we first got married, he was quiet but seemed relaxed around me. He doesn't call me Mom, but I felt he accepted me as someone living under the same roof. Now, 6 months after our marriage, our relationship has worsened. Alan, good morning. Breakfast is ready. Even when I greet him, he glares at me and doesn't touch the food I prepare. It's worrying for an 8-year-old to skip breakfast before going to school. Just the other day, he was making dinner requests, and our relationship seemed fine. Why has it changed? Alan, at least drink some milk, okay? Just leave me alone. His words cut deep into my heart. In a remarriage involving children, it's crucial to respect the child's feelings. Alan initially had high hopes for the new family but seems disappointed now that we're living together. But we are already married. I can't just give up and say, "Okay, I won't be your mom anymore." I have to face Alan, but he keeps pushing me away. Not only breakfast, but for dinner too, Alan pointedly eats instant noodles or junk food. However, she doesn't want to worry Ian, so in front of him, she maintains a facade, eating together and only appearing slightly grumpy. When she consults Ian, he's always grumpy. Just ignore him. It's the same response she's heard before. Then one day, she received news that a local friend had passed away. The burdens of reality and the friend's death weighed heavily on her mind. She couldn't take it anymore. She couldn't handle it all alone. Ian was the one who stood by her, noticing her pale face. "Are you okay? Sudden goodbyes are hard. Leave Lily to me and take your time to say goodbye properly. Your mom at home would be happy to see you. Stay not just for one night, but 2 or 3. Yeah, thanks." At times like this, she felt grateful to be married. Relying on Ian's kindness, she decided to attend the funeral and then stay at her childhood home nearby. Although it was close enough for a day trip, she thought a full day away from Alan might be beneficial, given their recent tensions. However, that night, when she was away from home, Alan called her. "Come back." Could it be that he missed her? For a moment, she thought so, but his voice was cold and low. She thought she heard Lily's voice faintly in the background. "What's wrong? Is Lily with you?" Ignoring her question, Alan gave a brief instruction. "Come back. Don't tell Dad anything." Despite being only 8 years old, he somehow seemed frightening. Before she could say anything, Alan abruptly ended the call. Alan and Lily didn't have their own phones, so they must have called from a public phone, making it impossible for her to call back. It was past 7 p.m. The thought of them walking alone to a public phone at this hour was terrifying. There was only one option: to go home immediately. She kept clutching her mobile phone, debating whether to contact Ian as the bus swayed. But Alan's cold yet somewhat desperate voice telling her not to tell Dad stopped her. She felt the urgency to get home quickly. Her hands were sweaty as she held her mobile phone. She arrived home just past midnight. There were no lights on in the house. Thinking they must have gone to bed, she quietly opened the front door, but suddenly a flashlight beam pierced the darkness. "You're late." The light revealed Alan's figure. "Sorry, so what is it? What happened?" "Just hurry." "What? What?" Alan grabbed her arm tightly and led her to the living room, without explaining anything. Then, she saw car lights outside the window. It looked like Ian's car was parked in the driveway. "This way." He forcefully pulled her, making her climb the small, steep stairs beside the living room. At the top was a loft they used for storage. "Wait a minute." She tried to pull her arm away, but Alan's stern expression sent a chill down her spine. The flashlight was turned off. She couldn't see anything. They were engulfed by darkness and silence. She couldn't help but feel scared of Alan's aggressive behavior. "What's going on?" "It's dark, scary. Where's Lily?" "Where is Lily?" My voice wouldn't come out properly, and my breathing naturally became erratic. "Shoo!" At Alan's warning, I even stopped breathing. The light in the living room came on. Even so, the light didn't reach the loft. Gradually, my eyes adjusted, and I could faintly see Alan's serious profile emerging from the darkness. "This is the living room. Pretty nice, right? This sofa, it's an electric sofa, it's really nice." It was Ian's voice. Even though it was the middle of the night, he had apparently brought a guest. There's juice in the fridge. Make yourself at home. Feel free to relax." What is this creepy way of speaking? His voice was trembling with joy, and a nasty laugh escaped. I glanced at Alan, who motioned with his chin, allowing me to look at what was happening below. Leaning forward quietly to avoid making any noise, I peeked into the living room below. "What?" I almost screamed and quickly covered my mouth. There was Ian and a girl. She had put on makeup to look mature, but her face still had an innocent look. I had never seen her before. A relative's child, maybe? So, how far is okay? I mean, you're staying over, so that's what this is, right? The girl's face twisted in disgust. But she quickly composed herself and showed resignation with a well, okay. Ian's eyes widened, and he began breathing heavily. Like a beast that had lost its reason in front of a defenseless small animal. Even without direct words, it was clear what Ian intended to do to the girl. What the girl had resigned herself to. All the blood rushed to my head, and I was hit with severe dizziness and a headache. Bringing a girl into a house that symbolizes the happiness of a family was unforgivable. More than anything, I couldn't stand the idea of this young girl, who still looked so childlike, becoming a victim of a filthy adult. Thinking that it was not something young Alan should see, I instinctively pushed him back. But then I realized that he had called me because he understood the situation. I gave Alan a big nod. Alan looked straight at me and nodded back. So, I already took you to eat at a family restaurant, so you're not hungry, right? Shall we get started? It's okay now, right? My family isn't home today, so don't hold back, okay? Spreading his hands beside his face to appear harmless, Ian inched closer to the girl. Don't be nervous. I'm nice, really. Finally, he put his hand around the girl's waist and pulled her close. Ian's cheeks flushed as he basked in the feeling of happiness. I have a child too, you know, only a couple of years younger than you. I'm good with girls, see? Yes, a girl not much younger than Lily. Is she Ian's affair partner? No, that can't be true. Ian is trying to hurt her deeply. That's not okay. Hey! Ian! She rushed down the stairs, almost tripping in her haste. Kara, why are you here? You were supposed to stay at your parents' place. Ian, startled, clung to the girl. Get your filthy hands off her right now. She strode over to Ian with large steps and twisted his arm without hesitation. Ah, ouch! What the? Let go! Let go! How long do you think you can keep touching her? I was surprised at how much force I suddenly had. Ian's sweaty hand was trembling, and his face twisted with pain. What were you trying to do to the girl? No, nothing. Don't lie. I've been watching you the whole time. I saw you brat looking at her with those lecherous eyes. No, it's not like that. If Ian was a beast, then I was the devil. I couldn't believe such filthy words were flowing from my mouth so easily. This was the first time I'd ever raised my voice and called someone brat. It felt like devil horns were about to burst from my head, with the heat and pain swirling inside my mind. I twisted Ian's arm with all my strength, forcing him to the floor. He curled up, protecting his head. I'm sorry, Kara, I'm sorry. I felt an urge to kick his pathetic back. No, it's not what you think. It was a moment of weakness. It wasn't cheating. I didn't betray you, Kara. It was just a mistake. I just met her. It's not cheating. Kara, you're the only one. It's not cheating. I'm sorry. Maybe the angry aura I had was terrifying, because he kept apologizing desperately. I took a slow, deep breath. So, it was just a moment of weakness? I looked down at Ian's round back and lowered my voice. Hearing my calm voice, the intense anger had subsided, and Ian cautiously raised his face. Kara! I know, it must have been shocking out of nowhere. I'm really sorry. I gave in to temptation. He was smart to keep apologizing, knowing he couldn't escape from the situation with me, his wife, having caught him red-handed. Admitting his fault honestly might help reduce my anger to a minimum. But that tactic only worked if it was a normal kind of cheating. So, you brought a girl home because I wasn't here, and it was just a mistake? Yes. I'm sorry, it won't happen again. Even though Ian showed deep remorse, I didn't smile at him yet. It won't happen a second time. Yes. But I won't forgive even the first time. But, I'm apologizing. With my anger still not subsiding, Ian frowned slightly and bit his lip, realizing nothing he did would be enough. If sorry was enough, we wouldn't need the police. Ian mumbled so softly I almost couldn't hear it. Damn, you're being dramatic. That one phrase lit the fuse of my anger once more. What did you say? Ian, crouching and apologizing repeatedly, finally showed his true colors when forgiveness was not forthcoming. That's why I'm apologizing. What else do you want me to do? Can't I be forgiven for even one mistake? This isn't a children's quarrel where a simple sorry and it's okay would suffice. It's incomprehensible why the offender thinks a mere apology at the moment would suffice, such selfish thinking. Just then, Alan, who had somehow been standing behind me, spoke up. If it's just this once and it was only an attempt, maybe we can forgive him. Alan! It seemed Ian had only now noticed Alan's presence. Feeling awkward for being seen in this disgraceful state by his own son, he reluctantly accepted Alan's unexpected support. Oh, Alan, you think so too, right? Mom is overreacting. Family is different from friends or lovers. Even if you make a big mistake, they're the ones who will comfort you and say it's okay. Alan, isn't family great? New mom, Kara, is someone with that kind heart. If I had heard this grand speech at another time, I might have liked Ian even more. He could eloquently say wonderful things, which is the Ian I loved. But now, knowing he's just a womanizer. No matter how many lovely speeches he gives, it feels chilling. Family, huh? That's quite convenient. Even within family, there are lines you shouldn't cross. Huh? Ian's face showed panic as Alan, who was supposed to be on his side, started saying something unsettling. No, it's not just about family, there are lines you shouldn't cross as a person. Ian was bewildered, but I understood what Alan was getting at. The girl Ian had brought home was sitting on the sofa, completely indifferent to the family's turmoil. I spoke to her. How old are you? 15. Her voice was thin. Though she looked bored, she was likely extremely anxious, having been brought into a stranger's home and unexpectedly witnessing a huge argument, regardless of her agreement. Don't worry. Even though she used mature makeup as a shield, she was still just a child. I gently rubbed her back as she averted her eyes. Then I turned to Ian. There won't be a second time. Even the first time is unforgivable. What Ian did is a one-strike and you're out situation. Ian gritted his teeth and glared resentfully at the girl who had revealed his secret. I didn't know. I thought she was around 20. Lacking the composure to act, he loudly and rudely spat out. She said on social media she had no money and no place to stay tonight, so I was just 100% trying to help her out of goodwill. I'm not the bad guy. She deceived me. Trapped me. I'm the victim here. Ian brazenly shifted the blame. But his victim act lasted only 10 seconds. Alan took a mobile phone out of his pocket and played a video. I fed you and gave you a place to stay, so it's only fair I get something in return, right? Ian's sleazy voice echoed from the phone. It seemed to be a covert recording at the entrance of the apartment where Ian and Alan used to live. The room's details were kept out of frame to protect the girl's privacy, but Ian's gleeful voice was clearly heard. Just before, pushed by Ian into the entrance, all the girls were still childlike. Even once is unforgivable. Though it wasn't just once. The phone Alan displayed had a cracked screen. It seemed he had used Ian's old and used phone. Before we got remarried, sometimes when I was kicked out, I'd leave my phone by the door. And that's how I got this video. Alan, who had been an ally, suddenly turned against Ian. As undeniable evidence was presented, Ian's face turned pale. No, it's not like that, Ian's lips just trembled, unable to come up with a convincing line to persuade me. Bringing a girl home today, was it just a momentary lapse in judgment? Did he offer a safe place to sleep out of pure goodwill to a girl with nowhere to go? Who would believe such an obvious lie? I pulled out my own phone and dialed 3 numbers. 911. It was an emergency call. 911, what is your emergency? I answered their question. It's an incident. What? Where? Who are you calling? Ian tried to snatch the phone from me, but he seemed weak, his body trembling like a fawn's. I dodged and explained the situation to 911. With just the minimal explanation, 911 understood and said the police were on their way. No way, 911? You didn't really call 911, did you? It's a bluff, right? I called. Ian clutched his head and screamed. Horrible. Why? You didn't have to make it such a big deal. He threw himself to the floor in a dramatic display, apologizing frantically. Sorry. I'll never do it again. I swear I love only Kara. I swear to God. I'm sorry, so sorry. He still didn't grasp the seriousness of the situation. No, he must have understood but was choosing to look away. The one you should be apologizing to isn't me. I grabbed Ian's head as he groveled on the floor, forcing his face up and turning it towards the girl standing in shock. As an adult, what the hell do you think you're doing? If you need to apologize, it's to her, not me. But I didn't do anything. What? Even an attempt is a crime. Ian shrieked again, cowering under my intense anger. He banged his forehead against the floor. I'm sorry. He managed to bow his head toward the girl. All these sorries, they sound so insincere. Do you really think you're at fault? Do you understand the weight of your crime? Eek! Ian, thoroughly frightened, screamed every time I opened my mouth. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. My rage was beyond anything I'd ever felt in over 40 years of life. If sorry was enough, we wouldn't need the police. Then why make me apologize? I've said sorry over and over. What more do you want me to do? Ian couldn't hold back his frustration and yelled. But he quickly realized and gave me a sad smile. I love Kara. I won't stray anymore. The video Alan showed you, that was from the past, right? If you're going to blame me for cheating before a remarriage, that's a bit much. The word love from his mouth made me sick. Impossible. Kara. Cheating is a terrible betrayal, but not a crime. Whether to forgive or not is up to the person involved. If he showed genuine remorse, maybe a second chance could be given. But Ian was different. He crossed the line by involving people he shouldn't have. No matter how many apologies, it won't be enough. No matter how many times you say sorry, the crime doesn't disappear. What Ian did is that serious. Deceiving a naive child and committing such vile acts, Ian, you're a monster. I shouted without holding back. Ian's breathing grew heavy, and he clutched at his chest as if in pain. You're kidding me. The words Ian managed to squeeze out were unexpected. You're calling me a demon? Are you kidding? I'm a god. To these runaway girls with nowhere to go, I'm like a god. I'm their savior. Being called a demon seemed to have struck a nerve, and Ian began to boast about his actions. I'm helping these girls. I'm protecting them. If protecting them is a crime, then you'd rather have them out on the dangerous streets at night? Kara, you're a cold-hearted person. I'm disappointed. So, when you protect them, you look at them with lustful eyes. It's give and take in this world. When someone is kind to you, you have to show gratitude. What's wrong with expecting something in return? I'm a god. The girls worship me. Isn't it an honor for them to be with a god instead of being attacked by some unknown man? Right? Isn't that right? Incredibly, Ian sought agreement from the disillusioned girl on the sofa. So, I'm not wrong. Ian spread his arms wide, fully embodying his self-proclaimed godhood. As he basked in this delusion, someone approached him from behind. A hand patted Ian on the shoulder. All right, God. Let's continue this conversation at the police. Huh? A man in a police uniform had placed his hand on Ian's shoulder and was smiling. While Ian was grandstanding, Alan had quietly left the living room and brought in the police. Wait, really? The police? Kara, did you seriously call the cops? Ian's face twisted into a half-smile of panic. I nodded quietly. You can't just ignore a crime happening right in front of you. It was all consensual. The grip on Ian's shoulder tightened. We'll hear more about that at the station. Let's go. Wait, no. Kara? You betrayed me? Why, we're family. Ian, still defiant, was urged out the door by the officer. He reached out to me for help. But I had no intention of taking his hand. Noticing my cold expression, Ian's eyes darted to Alan. Alan! Desperately, he called out to Alan. Wait a moment. Alan stopped the officer. Ian's tear-filled eyes showed a glimmer of hope. Take this cell phone with you. The officer looked puzzled, so I explained. It contains videos of his past misdeeds. Alan added. And this is the phone he used to have. It's full of creepy messages with the girls. The hope in Ian's eyes quickly faded, as his own son handed over evidence that would ruin him. Alan. You're abandoning me, your dad? Ian's voice, filled with anger and desperation, croaked out. Alan, who had remained stoic in the face of Ian's behavior, finally showed his disgust. You abandoned me first. You left me to play around with young girls. Ian could only clench his jaw, unable to retort. He seemed ready to silence Alan with force, but the officer's presence kept him in check. Soon, more officers arrived, and Ian was handcuffed by two of them. The girl on the sofa, who had been curled up in fear, was safely taken into protective custody. Ian glared resentfully at Alan and me as he was led away by the police. Ian was neither a god nor a dad. I gently put my arm around his shoulder. In my arms, Alan's tension finally eased. Ian had tried to claim to the police that it was protective custody, that it was consensual, but such excuses were never going to be accepted. He seemed to always be on the lookout for girls he could lure. Of course, all his overtime was a lie. It was common for him to break promises and not show up, which is why his sudden end to enjoyable overtime wasn't surprising. He became notorious nationwide as a despicable criminal who preyed on vulnerable children. They meant no harm. I just wanted to see my family. He reportedly said this to the police. Ian, thoroughly dejected, requested that I bring Lily to visit him, but the thought of exposing her to his gaze, even with a barrier between them, was revolting. so I went to see Ian alone. You came. Oh. Where's Lily? I didn't respond to his question. I came for the visit, but not to engage in pointless conversation. I brought you something. Oh, thank you. Don't get the wrong idea. It's the divorce papers. Oh. The smile vanished from Ian's lips. Did you think you had the right to refuse? Sign them quickly. With those words, I stood up. Seeing him slumped behind the acrylic barrier, I knew that even if he got out in a few years, there would be no family waiting for him. Perhaps out of spite, Ian refused to sign, but after the divorce, I took Alan in. At first, Alan felt guilty and out of place, but after a few months of living with the three of us, he got used to it. He remarried to have someone take care of me. There was a lot of pressure from those around him. He needed someone to be a mom. He had been neglected for most of his life. Understanding Ian's true intentions, he was hesitant about the remarriage but came to want a family after experiencing kindness from me and Lily. But there was another reason he wanted to get married. Lily. Just being near the adorable Lily was enough to make Ian happy. But he wanted more than that. That day, when Kara was out, he saw it as a chance. He tried to get rid of me to be alone with Lily. Realizing this, Alan managed to get Lily to a friend's house. I was grateful to the friend's family for taking Lily in so unexpectedly. I'm sorry for all the trouble he caused. Alan had been cold to me because he understood Ian's inappropriate gaze towards Lily. It hurt to think how much the child had suffered, trying to protect others. Alan, it's not your fault. Thank you for protecting Lily and me. Yeah. He smiled. A dimple appeared on his right cheek, looking very cute. From now on, you can lean on me. You're still just a kid, Alan. I thought it best not to treat him too much like a child, so I just patted his shoulder. Then Lily came running in. After hugging me, she ruffled his hair like a playful puppy. That's right. You're still a kid, Alan, so rely on Mom and me. Stop it. Despite his strong protests, his ticklish smile was indeed adorable. Both Lily and Alan are my precious children. I want to protect their innocent smiles forever. The incident happened on the day I left home for a 2-day trip to attend a memorial service. As I returned home after the service, I heard someone crying from inside the house. Rushing in, I found my grandson Robert sitting alone in the middle of a hot room, crying. Where are Dad and Mom? I asked. They went somewhere with Betty. Robert sobbed. He is only 3 years old and can't go to the bathroom by himself yet. His small body was dirty, and seeing him in such a pitiable state, I couldn't help but hug him. Leaving their child alone for such a long time like this is practically a crime. I was already furious at this point, but I needed to know what they were thinking, so I called my son David. After a while, he finally picked up the phone. Hello? What? Is the memorial service over already? Where are you guys right now? Huh? Now? I'm on a trip with Emma and Betty. Since Mom's away, we thought we'd take some family time to relax. To my astonishment, he had gone on a trip to a tourist destination far from home, leaving Robert behind. And it was for 4 days. At that moment, I realized for sure. David and his wife Emma no longer had any sense of responsibility as Robert's parents. They were careless, had no guilt about what they were doing, and that wasn't changing even at that moment. Hearing their insensitive words, my anger reached its peak. I didn't want to be at the mercy of my son and his wife any longer. To protect him, I decided to end this cohabitation. I hung up the phone without saying a word. I would take care of everything before David and Emma returned. A few days later, they would be surprised. The locks on the house were changed, and they couldn't get inside.
The locks won't open. What's going on?
My enraged son and his wife called me, not knowing the retribution that awaited them. My name is Kate. A few years ago, I lost my husband to illness and lived alone for a while, but now I live with my son David, his wife Emma, and my grandchildren Robert and Betty, the 5 of us together. Originally, my son and his family lived separately, but 6 months ago, David suddenly contacted me. "Mom, I'm worried about you living alone. How about moving in together?" And said. So, they quickly moved into my house, and here we are. Even when my husband was alive, and after he passed away, David rarely visited or contacted me, so I didn't understand why he suddenly wanted to move in with his wife and kids. But indeed, I did have concerns about being alone in case something happened, so I accepted his offer. David had actually been married to another woman in the past. We didn't have much opportunity to talk, but she was a beautiful and delicate-looking woman. I was shocked when David told me that she had cheated, leading to their divorce. Robert, born from him and his ex-wife, ended up being raised by David. Raising a child as a single father isn't easy, and I worried whether David, who didn't seem particularly reliable, could properly care for Robert. But soon after the divorce, he met Emma and quickly remarried, which was a relief. Before long, Betty was born. Currently, my son and his wife have 2 children, 3-year-old Robert and 1-year-old Betty, making them a family of 4. Robert and Betty are both bright and friendly, calling me grandma and eagerly telling me things. Their pure, sparkling eyes and excited voices are so beautiful and dazzling. The presence of my grandson and granddaughter healed my lonely heart after losing my husband. Both of them are truly adorable and incredibly precious to me. But right now, I have a significant problem that I cannot ignore. It's about the way David and Emma treat Robert. As I mentioned earlier, Robert is David's son from a previous marriage and has no blood relation to Emma. Perhaps because of that, Emma dotes on her own daughter Betty while clearly being cold toward Robert. When Betty cries, Emma rushes to comfort her, but she ignores Robert and won't even make eye contact with him. I understand that it's a difficult situation for Emma to be in as a stepmother, so initially, I thought time would heal things. However, no matter how much time passes, her attitude toward him does not improve at all. In fact, recently, even David, who is Robert's biological father, has started to only show affection for Betty, just like Emma. Now, I am the only one standing up for him, and although he doesn't say it, he looks visibly lonely. Sometimes, I catch him looking enviously at Betty, who gets all the attention from David and Emma. At 3 years old, he still needs his parents' love and attention, but they won't give him any. He hasn't done anything wrong, but he doesn't know how to react to such treatment. Yet, Robert never complains. Dad and Mom are busy taking care of Betty. That's what he says to me, never showing any sign of his sadness. It's frustrating not being able to do anything for him. Additionally, I have another issue with Emma. She doesn't work and is a stay-at-home mom, but she doesn't help with any household chores. She spends every day idly at home, doing nothing. Cooking, cleaning, laundry. I handle all the household chores while she just watches TV or plays with her smartphone. She even leaves all of Robert's care to me and doesn't bother to drop him off or pick him up from daycare. Even though she is supposed to be Robert's mother, she acts as if he doesn't exist. David indulges Emma and never says anything to her. As a result, her behavior has escalated, and she has become more arrogant, lounging around the house with an air of superiority. I didn't want to become a meddling mother-in-law, so I endured it, but it got to the point where I couldn't take it anymore, and my anger exploded. I tried to have a conversation with her. Whoever can handle the household chores should do them. It's only natural that I can't love Robert since we aren't related by blood. Kate, you should be happy you get to take care of your adorable grandson, right? She justified herself. In the end, the conversation was meaningless. Since that discussion, my relationship with Emma has deteriorated further, and her attitude toward Robert and me has worsened. She insults us and makes snide remarks at every opportunity, making life even harder for Robert and me. Once, when Robert was crying, she yelled at him,
I wish someone like you had never been born.
Even if they aren't blood related, it's something a mother should never say to a young child. I couldn't forgive Emma for this, nor David for doing nothing about it, but I endured it for Robert's sake. Until that day. One day, I had to leave home for 2 days to attend a memorial service at my parents' house. When I told David about it, okay, he said and went back to sleep. Emma, have a good time, she said sarcastically while continuing to play with her smartphone. Despite my lingering worries about how David and Emma would treat Robert, I thought they wouldn't neglect him completely while I was away. Well, please take care of Robert and Betty. I told David and Emma this and then returned to my parents' house. Then the incident happened. When I got home after the memorial service, I heard someone crying from inside the house. I hurried in and found Robert sitting alone in the middle of a hot room, crying. Where is Dad and Mom? I asked. They went somewhere with Betty, Robert replied, sobbing. Looking at the table, I saw snacks and bread scattered around. It seemed that David and Emma had left them, and Robert had been trying to satisfy his hunger with them. For Robert, who couldn't prepare food on his own, this was the only food he could reach by himself. It must have been tough for him to spend the whole day with just this. Moreover, Robert is only 3 years old and cannot go to the bathroom by himself. His small body was dirty, and I couldn't help but hug him, feeling sorry for him. After bathing Robert and cleaning him up, I quickly prepared a warm meal for him. Seeing the food, Robert looked extremely happy and began to eat eagerly, looking relieved. It's delicious, thank you. He smiled at me, and I felt relieved seeing him. Take your time, you don't have to rush, I told him gently, thinking about what to do next. What I understood at that moment was that David and Emma had left Robert alone and gone somewhere. They must have taken Betty with them. It was clear that they had deliberately left him behind. I deeply regretted my leniency. Even if they usually treated him coldly, I never thought they would leave their own child alone for a long time like this. This could be considered a crime. This incident might cause Robert to develop a fear of being alone in the future. David and Emma probably couldn't even imagine that they had inflicted a permanent scar on their child's heart. Leaving Robert in the living room after he finished eating, I went into my room, closed the door, and locked it so that Robert wouldn't hear, and called David. What on earth was going on? Why did they leave Robert alone and go out? Where were they now? By this point, my anger was already exploding, but I tried to ask calmly what they were thinking. When I called, the usual loud music played. David's ringtone was by an artist I didn't recognize at all. I always thought it was inappropriate for a grown man to have such a ringtone, and in this situation, it only fueled my anger. After a while, David finally picked up the phone, sounding very annoyed. Hello? What? The memorial service is over already? He asked nonchalantly. Trying hard to keep my voice steady, I responded bluntly. I finished and came back home. Robert was left alone and was crying. David laughed as he heard that. Oh, really? He managed to stay home alone. I thought he'd be fine since I left some food. Glad you got back early, Mom. I couldn't understand how my own son could laugh while saying such a thing. Left alone in that state, what if I had returned later than planned? 3-year-old Robert can barely do anything on his own. What did he think would happen if such a young child was left alone for so long? He was definitely too young to be left alone. But instead of saying that, I asked the question I most wanted to know calmly.
I have a lot to say, but never mind. More importantly, where are you right now?
David said something unbelievable.
What?
Now? Emma, Betty, and I are on vacation. You aren't here, and we're just relaxing as a family. To my surprise, David had gone on a trip to a tourist destination far from home. And it was a 3-night, 4-day trip. They were enjoying their vacation while leaving Robert behind. I could hear Emma. "Hey, let's go. I'm hungry." On the other end of the phone. At that moment, I was convinced. David and Emma no longer saw themselves as Robert's parents. They were irresponsible, and they felt no guilt for what they were doing, and that wasn't changing at this moment. Hearing David and Emma's insensitive words, my anger reached its peak. How could they leave behind a member of their family, especially a young 3-year-old like Robert, and say such things? They couldn't even imagine how lonely and scared Robert was, left alone in the house. I didn't want to be at the mercy of my son and his wife anymore. I decided to end this living arrangement to protect Robert. I hung up the phone silently. Before David and Emma came back, I would take care of everything. First, the house. This house, full of precious memories with my husband, was now being used by David and Emma as they pleased. My late husband wouldn't have wanted this situation either. So, I decided to sell the house and not let them have their way any longer. I immediately contacted a real estate agent to sell the house. The agent was surprised when I told them, but sensing my desperation, they simply said they understood and proceeded with the contract. However, selling a house isn't a quick process. Finding a buyer would take time. But I didn't want David and Emma living in this house any longer. So, I had the locks changed. Now David and Emma couldn't enter the house. I contacted my family and explained the situation, sending all my belongings to my family's home. With that, I had no more ties to this house. I decided to live with Robert at my family's home. When I said, "Robert, we're going to my family's home, and we'll live there from now on, okay?" He replied,
Understand.
He took my hand and followed me without fuss. Even at such a young age, he must have felt something. He must have had feelings about being abandoned by his parents. But he didn't say anything about it and stayed by my side, trusting me. I reaffirmed my determination to protect Robert from now on. That was the moment I renewed my determination. A few days passed quickly, and the day my son and his wife were supposed to come back arrived. I waited with my smartphone in hand. The phone should be ringing soon. Sure enough, the phone rang as expected. I checked the caller ID and saw it was David. I intentionally didn't answer and watched the phone vibrate for a while. David kept calling without hanging up. He would keep calling until I answered. I took a deep breath to calm myself and finally pressed the call button. As soon as I answered, David spoke in an angry tone.
The house keys won't work. What's going on?
I almost laughed at his predictable reaction, but steadied myself and calmly told him that I had changed the locks. David, hearing this, said,
I don't understand. This is our house.
With a forceful tone. But that house was my husband's, not David and Emma's. However, it's probably too late to say anything meaningful to my son now. So I continue to deliver the message I need to convey in a calm and collected manner.
The house is already up for sale, so neither of you can enter anymore. Also, leaving 3-year-old Robert alone at home is a crime. I'm reporting this to the police, so be prepared."
Upon hearing the word police, David started to panic.
"There's no need to do that. I haven't done anything wrong,"
he shouted. It seems Emma, who was probably listening to our conversation from afar, started making a fuss too. But I couldn't care less about what she was saying. In this situation, they were only worried about themselves, which confirmed to me that my decision was the right one. I quietly ended the call while hearing David's pleas and Emma's insults directed at me. The phone kept ringing persistently afterward, so I set up call blocking and put down my smartphone. It's all over now. They will face the consequences of their actions. As planned, I went to the police to report David and Emma. A little while later, David and Emma were arrested for child neglect. They denied the charges, but after being questioned by the police and the prosecutor, they were convicted in court. The last time I saw them in court, they looked terribly worn out and lacked their previous vigor. Life in prison would be tough, but I hope they reflect on their actions there. This incident was also covered in the news, and their faces were exposed to the public, causing a bit of a media stir. A year has passed since then, and they were released after 3 months, but the incident led to their divorce. There was a dispute over who would take custody of Betty, but in the end Emma, the mother, got custody. David lost his job due to the incident and struggled to find new employment with a criminal record. He managed to live as a part-timer, but he had to take on a significant amount of debt to pay the monthly compensation. By the way, this compensation wasn't paid to Emma. It was to his ex-wife from a previous divorce. It later turned out that the cause of that divorce was David's infidelity. And the other woman was none other than Emma. He had started an affair with Emma shortly after Robert was born, while still married to his ex-wife. It turns out that David had been quite the party-goer and was frequently attending social gatherings behind his ex-wife's back. He continued his affair with her, but when she became pregnant, his ex-wife found out, leading to their divorce. Naturally, he was ordered to pay compensation, and his income alone couldn't cover it. That's when he came up with the idea to move in with me. This way, he wouldn't have to pay rent, and if needed, he could ask me for money. Emma also agreed quickly because she wouldn't have to do housework. So, their decision to move in with me wasn't out of concern for me, it was all for their benefit. They hadn't contacted me in a long time, and their sudden change in attitude had such ulterior motives. Upon discovering this truth, I felt less shocked about being deceived by my son and more angered by my own gullibility for being used for such a reason. I had always known David was irresponsible and careless, but I was so lonely after losing my husband that I accepted his proposal without question. Reflecting on my choices at that time, I sighed in exasperation at my own son, who turned out to be such an incorrigible person. He has caused his own troubles and now they are all coming back to him. It is his responsibility. He should atone for trampling on not just debts, but also many people's feelings and thoughts for the rest of his life. On the other hand, after taking in Betty, Emma lived with her parents but became depressed because she couldn't stand the cold stares from people due to the incident. I heard that she has been shutting herself in her room and living listlessly. I was worried about Betty, but Emma's parents are taking care of her, so she is fine for now. Her parents must be having a hard time, but I hope Betty grows up to be strong and kind, not like Emma. And Emma, like David, is now facing the consequences of her actions. She will have to live while atoning for her sins. As for Robert and me, we are now living a peaceful and happy life at my parents' house. Of course, Robert still needs a lot of care, and even though my parents are helping, there are many challenges. Robert, who is still small and doesn't understand much now, will eventually grow up and learn about his parents. When that day comes, he will surely feel pain and sadness. He may never forget being left alone at home that day. But even so, I will stay by Robert's side, watching him grow and overcoming many difficulties together. Having been tormented by my son and his wife, Robert and I now want to live enjoyable days that erase the dark past. Robert looks up to me like a mother and is growing up healthy. His honest and pure words and actions often teach me things, making me feel like I am growing as well. I never imagined that at my age I would be raising a child again, but I am truly grateful that it is Robert. I was tricked by David into living with my son and his wife, enduring unnecessary hardships. I regret that, but because of it, I was able to save Robert from those two and now spend time together, so it wasn't in vain. As long as he needs me, I will give him all my love like a mother. I can't replace his real mother, but I am confident that my love won't lose. I hope Robert grows up to be a broad-minded person who cares about others, not someone who only thinks about himself like David and Emma. One day, while I was thinking about such things, I was taking a walk with Robert in the neighborhood when an elderly couple walking their dog approached us. Seeing the dog, Robert smiled and, "It's a dog!" The elderly couple told him to pet the dog, and he happily petted its head and talked to it. Even without my worries, Robert will surely grow up to be a kind and respectable person. It was a scene that made me think so. Through that incident, the bond between him and me as a family has deepened. No matter what happens from now on, we will surely be okay. As I was thinking about this, Robert called me. For my still clingy and precious son, I will do my best today as well. You're a bad woman, dear.
Isn't it the same for you, listening to such a bad woman? By the way, is everything okay with Jane?
It's fine. I just can't see her as a woman anymore. For Michael and Linda, it was definitely not the first meeting with each other, but the moment we were alone, that is what it comes to. I felt something boiling up from the bottom of my stomach. Leaving them, the three of us headed to the botanical and zoological park. It was a perfect day for a drive. As we entered the main road, Lisa said,
"Oh, right.
What's up?"
Mom, I made sure the doors were locked."
At that moment, probably both Nick and I froze. What she was talking about was the entrance to the basement where the two should be. My name is Jane, a 35-year-old housewife. Currently living with my 2 years older husband, Michael, and our 8-year-old daughter, Lisa. I've thought about having another child. But there were 2 reasons why it ended up being just Lisa. One of the reasons was that I couldn't dream of having siblings myself. I have one sister, Linda. Our parents obviously favored her more, even to an outsider's eyes. I didn't like our parents for favoring just Linda, nor did I like myself for resenting her. That's why I was scared to give Lisa a sister. Linda has been pretty since she was little, even from a younger sister's point of view. Bright-colored clothes suits her with a nice body. She has always been smiling and good at acting cute. On the other hand, I've looked so plain. No makeup or clothes suited me, which my mother was bored.
"Oh boy, you never look pretty with any items."
I hated her size for that. The main reason I went to a university in Urban and looked for a job was to get away from home, my parents, and Linda. Linda recently returned our family home again. I learned about it from a phone call from my mother.
"What's up? It's rare for you to call."
Well, you see, Linda's come back again.
Again?
Linda had been married twice before. The first time was right after graduating from university. Frankly, it was a shotgun wedding. A marriage of necessity, though these days they say blessed with a child. At the time, Linda's situation was really one of no choice. Her partner was 5 years older than her. They met at a group blind date, and Linda aggressively approached him. As a result, she got pregnant before getting a job and ended up marrying. Her first husband was a decent marriage partner, even in our parents' eyes. His parents were initially happy to have a beautiful wife for their son. However, Linda showed her true colors soon enough. Before 5 years were up, her spending habits kicked in, depleting the savings meant for their future home. When her first husband could no longer trust her, he brought up divorce. However, since their son Nick was still young, custody went to Linda. Nick's father was extremely frustrated.
But she was with her next husband for quite a while, wasn't she? What happened? Well, you see, she cheated.
My mother's voice was heavy. A year after her divorce, Linda quickly found someone else and remarried thanks to being in her 20s. A beautiful divorcee with a child made a difference. Her next partner was the manager of the part-time job she was working at. Her appearance and charm played a big part again. After the marriage to the store manager, she quit her part-time job to care about rumors.
I told her to stop overspending this time.
But you know. Well, the spending did decrease somewhat. The income of her new husband was less than the first one. In fact, he had inherited a house after losing his parents early. Maybe Linda's aim was there. No need to spend on a future home, but if she did it again, she'd lose her place to live.
But you know, it was fine until Nick was in elementary school. What does that mean? As you know, the interactions between parents or attending school events decreased as Nick was grown up.
I nodded deeply. Certainly, being busy with such interactions doesn't leave much free time.
Then, Linda had time on her hands. Wait, time on her hands and she cheated?
Well, yeah.
She always picks good men as husbands, but as for being attractive as men,
I was astonished. Can a mother say such a thing?
So now, Linda and Nick are staying at our house. By the way, she got divorced because of cheating, right? Could she pay the compensation from the divorce trial?
Do you think she could pay?
We had no choice but to cover it from our side.
So, it wasn't just a temporary cover. As usual, too lenient.
Oh, Jane, she said she'd come to visit your place sometimes. What? You're joking. Why do I have to entertain her now?
What are you saying? She's your only sister. Oh man, started again.
You've always been cold-hearted.
Linda said so too. You hardly ever come back home. That's true. Why would I need to return to a place where I'm uncomfortable? Please, think about Nick.
He's had to change schools so many times and seems so uncomfortable.
I was at a loss for words when she mentioned that. Nick really is a good kid. Eventually, Linda and Nick started coming to our house frequently. Ironically, we now live in the neighboring city to our hometown, just an hour's drive away. Having Linda as a sister made me lose interest in having siblings and not want more children. The other reason was that after giving birth, my relationship with Michael became less intimate. It started with a job transfer and moving. Originally, we lived near the city center when we first got married. But around the time I finished pregnancy and childbirth, Michael got suddenly transferred. The place we moved to was Denver. Then he suddenly said,
"This house looks very nice. Let's purchase it."
The house was located in the eastern edge of Denver. We ended up living an hour's drive from our parents' home on the west end. The house had a basement, which he was most into.
I've always wanted a studio.
That was news to me. I knew he was into art. He chose art museums for our dates before we got married. But I never thought he'd paint himself.
Oh? Didn't I mention it? I was in the art club in high school and wanted to go to art college.
However, the costly tuition fee for art colleges were impossible for his family. It seemed to be a lingering regret for him. When purchasing own house, he always wanted a studio.
But why basement? I need stable lighting from above, facing north.
Actually, that was a semi-basement with the first floor raised. The studio was placed where there were light-well windows. But it was too big only for the studio, so I decided to use half the room near the stairs as storage. As soon as we moved, I gathered various things and stored them there. Also, it became a place for occasional outdoor gear and my homemade wine. The studio's inner door is solid, lockable from both inside and outside. Once locked from the inside, it's Michael's dream space. On the other hand, the storage entrance has a very simple latch. Given the solid inner door, we didn't put much emphasis on the storage door. Michael started spending more and more time in that basement.
Hey Mom, Dad doesn't play with me much since we moved here.
I could only sigh at Lisa's sad words. It was still okay when it was newly built, but gradually he brought in a small fridge, a single bed, and a tablet. He often stayed overnight on the eve of holidays, only coming up for the bathroom and bath on the first floor.
Why don't you take Lisa to the amusement park sometime? You want to take away my only pleasure? This is how I refresh to keep going at work every day.
The number of arguments increased and our marital life decreased. I spent my days on the upper floor with Lisa. We originally had 2 semi-double beds, but one was often unused. I frequently ended up sleeping with Lisa. Amidst all that, Linda started imposing herself on my place. Besides, she brought her son Nick with her.
It's a bit strict at our place, but yours is spacious. Nick can study, right?
Saying that, she'd leave Nick and go out. He would diligently do his homework and revision or entertain Lisa, waiting for his mother to return. One day, Linda noticed our basement.
Oh, what's this? It's Michael's studio. You'll get in trouble if you go in, so stay out, Linda. A studio. Michael paints?
She only said that much at the time. But that day, unlike usual, she stayed until night. At the dinner table, which I had cooked a lot, I started those conversation.
So, Michael, I hear you paint.
Oh, yes. A bit embarrassing to admit.
There's nothing embarrassing about it. It's a wonderful hobby.
Thanks, but my wife here, she doesn't really appreciate it.
But you know, art is something that's not easily understood by the average person.
I felt uneasy at Linda's sweet words.
Do you paint landscapes?
Currently, yes. Landscapes are still lives. I used to enjoy painting portraits in high school.
Portraits, you say?
Her eyes widened.
Then, may I model for you?
Huh? Are you sure, Linda?
I've always wanted someone to paint a portrait of me.
But Linda, aren't you job hunting right now? Right, that's her excuse for driving around during the day.
What are you talking about? Even if I'm job hunting, I have days off, right?
That's true, weekends are free for me too. Jane, you probably don't know about modeling fees. It's really helpful when someone close offers to model.
Wait, what about our picnic next weekend?
True, we were planning to go to the nearby botanical and zoological park for a picnic, a long-awaited trip. Then Nick chimed in. Hey Lisa, would you mind if I joined?
You coming?
Yeah. I've always wanted to visit that botanical and zoological park.
That's right, Jane. Michael's busy with me, so why don't you go with our Nick?
Linda chuckled and smirked at me. I understand. This woman is targeting my husband, just like in the past. Then, shall we discuss it now?
Sure.
And leaving dinner somewhat unfinished, Michael and Linda headed down to the basement. Left behind, we continued eating with 2 plates of leftovers in front of us. Sorry about Mom. Nick expressed his apology to me. There's no need for you to apologize, Nick. Besides, it's just modeling. Do you believe so? He gave a wry, mature smile. After a silent meal, he stood beside me to help with the dishes. Thanks, that helps. No problem, I'm used to it. He took the job of wiping and putting away the dishes, but he seemed to have something on his mind. What's wrong? Listen, Jane. Actually. He looked at me with a kind of desperation. Do you have something you want to tell me? I lowered my voice. Right, he must have offered to help to tell me something he didn't want Lisa to hear. Mom always lures men like that.
You knew that?
Yes. She even kicked me out of the house to cheat on someone recently. I shivered.
Really?
Yes. My dad was very dedicated to his work and treated me like his own son. But he often worked late into the night. Taking advantage of that, Mom brought a man home. So, I took photos and recorded their voices and told Dad. He bit his lip. I was so frustrated, thinking about how good my dad was. He clenched the cloth in his hand.
Then Dad thanked me for telling him, and he started the divorce proceedings. So, you were the reason for their divorce? Yes. I felt sorry for that poor man being deceived by Mom. He didn't tell anyone that the evidence came from me. He couldn't take me in, but at least he didn't want to make my position worse. I see. Now, you're telling me that because you want me to do something? I think you should go check on them downstairs in a little while. Okay, I will.
I replied. Then for 2 hours, Nick kept Lisa entertained with games. I like you very much, Nick. Nick, the well-behaved child, was excellent at handling Lisa. During breaks in the game, they searched the botanical and zoological park on the tablet, exciting her with what's there and what they'll see. As they happily played, I quietly headed down to the basement. Both the storage entrance and the inner door were left open. I silently and without turning on the light, entered the storage area, and crept towards a spot where I could see inside. What I saw was Linda sitting on a still life stand, embracing Michael. Even from a distance, I could see that the buttons on Linda's blouse were undone. You're a bad woman, dear.
Aren't you the same, listening to such a bad woman? By the way, is everything okay with Jane?
It's fine. I can't even think of her as a woman anymore. Laughing together in low voices, the unbearable sounds continued. It was definitely not the first meeting for them. So, this is what happens when they're alone. I felt something boiling up from deep within. But I didn't barge in angrily at that moment. The phrase art model is convenient. Even if Linda was dressed like that, she'd probably calmly say,
"There's such a thing as a nude model, right?"
Moreover, Michael would defend it with and say, "It's to understand the body's lines." I needed something more conclusive. Quietly, I went back outside and up the stairs. Seeing me return, Nick simply told me, "See? Just like I said. What will you do, Jane?" His tone was mature and unemotional. "I've thought of something."
Okay. I'll prepare myself too.
Then, the weekend arrived. It was Saturday with a clear sky, and warmer than expected. Maybe we can have lunch on the grass at the Botanical and Zoological Park, I thought, searching the storage for outdoor gear with Lisa. By that time, the inner door was already closed. Although Linda brought Nick, she quickly entered Michael's studio and closed the door. We couldn't tell what was happening behind that door.
What do we have here?
Let's see, a sheet and a pop-up tent in case the wind picks up, plus pegs. Also, ropes so it doesn't fly away.
Jane, is the tent okay?
We'll ask at the entrance later. We continued chatting while carrying things out. Nick and I had our hands full, so we left the door open. Then, we got in the car and drove off. It was really a great day for a drive. As we entered the main road, suddenly Lisa said,
"Oh, right.
What's up?"
Mom, I locked the door."
Huh?
"Well, you guys both had your hands full. It's not good to leave the door open when we're leaving."
At that moment, probably both Nick and I froze. Lisa knew about the studio but didn't understand what kind of place it was. Michael takes care of all the cleaning and has told me not to touch anything. So, during the day, I usually lock the inner door to prevent Lisa from moving anything. But today, "Hey Lisa, why did you lock the storage door?" Nick asked her.
"Well, earlier, the door of the usually well-closed inner room was swinging." "Hey Mom, you always lock the inner room, right? But I don't know where the key for that is. So I thought locking it from the outside would be okay."
Okay, I see. The inner door has a proper lock. But the outer one is just a latch. So even Lisa could lock it. I see. That makes sense. I visualized the situation and felt a smile spreading on my face. Then I said to them, "Hey guys, let's go see Dad's parents after this, okay?"
"Wow, really?
Is that okay?" That was the plan. Going to my in-laws' house was part of it. But I added, "It's been a while, let's stay overnight." In the next evening, after having a delightful time and enjoying every meal at my in-laws' house, it's time to head back. No, not yet. Michael's father George and I was arguing about staying longer. Then, my smartphone rang.
Hello. What? The police?
What's up, Jane? Put it on speaker, will you? Following George's request, I switched to speaker and answered the call.
Is this Jane's phone? Yes, this is Jane.
There seemed to be noise in the background of the police officer, with ambulance sirens blaring.
What happened? Well, we received a report from your neighbors about sounds of breaking glass and bad smell coming from your basement. What?
I was surprised and got aloud.
What's going on?
Michael was staying today, right?
Yeah, but why?
I said to George, my in-laws are truly kind people. They rarely can't see their granddaughter Lisa, but they adore her. The only concern of them is that they shared their complaints about Michael, who suddenly had bought a faraway house, over the phone. Honestly, compared to my parents, they're much more reasonable people. They even warmly welcome Nick, who's technically just my nephew. I asked the police.
So, what exactly happened? Yes, it seems Michael broke the window. Could you explain a bit more? I'll give you the details in sequence.
Then we'll go play games over there.
Okay.
Sensing the situation, Nick took Lisa away. It was indeed not a conversation for Lisa to hear. Then the police officer began to explain to us. A neighbor was startled by the sound of breaking glass and peeked into our house. The neighbor hesitated at first, but knew with each other well, so entered the yard to find the source of the noise. She discovered it was the window of our usually unnoticed basement. In a panic, she peered through the broken window and smelled something awful. Then she saw a naked man and woman, wrapped in blankets and sheets, writhing in pain. Soon after, she hurriedly called the police. One of the naked people was identified as Michael. My in-laws' faces twisted as they listened.
What on earth is he doing?
Ignoring George's anger, I continued.
We're hearing the ambulance siren there? Yes. When we approached, we were told they were trapped and injured, so we called an ambulance and a rescue team.
What a big operation. My in-laws sighed more heavily.
We removed a window pane due to security considerations, as the front door was locked, and sent in a team to rescue the two. Thank you. But what kind of injuries? Michael apparently fell from a stand trying to climb out of the window and hurt his back.
My in-laws looked shocked, their mouths gaping. Then, I asked something else that needed to be confirmed.
The other woman, is her name Linda by any chance? She's my sister. Okay, your sister, she is.
The police officer hesitated.
What's wrong? Yes, she identified herself as Linda. We've already contacted your family about this, but the source of the bad smell was her. Excuse me? It seems she had a stomach upset, maybe due to the cold or drinking too much beer. She was naked and had defecated. There's a lot of excrement scattered in your basement. I'm sorry. Apparently, they tried to clean themselves with the stored drinking water in the storage. It spread all over the floor and soaked into the clothes they had left behind, affecting both of them. My in-laws grimaced at the mention of the clothes. Where is my husband now? Which hospital? Let's see. The police gave the hospital name and address and hung up. I couldn't quite comprehend what was happening. I should say, I was aware we had locked them in. I thought there would be solid evidence of the affair, and we could thoroughly check the studio later. However, that was unexpected. Certainly, if locked in, they couldn't use the toilet. To think it led to such a big incident with the police, ambulance, and rescue team. Jane, are you all right? Realizing the call had ended, Nick rushed over and shook me. Then he suddenly apologized toward my in-laws. I'm so sorry for what my mom did. Right, I needed to play the responding to his questions. Nick, did you hear that? I heard Linda's name. Sorry, that's my mom. She was targeting Michael. What? So, she said she'd model. I deliberately raised my voice. Yes, and she tried to let us go out. That's terrible. I'm so sorry. No, you're not the one. Apologize for such things. George, could you guys please go to see Michael now? That's right.
I have to listen to the situation exactly. What about you, Jane?
I'm not sure what to do now. I'm too shaken and might cause an accident if I drive.
Okay, all right. We'll go check on him.
Thank you.
After they left, Nick and I exchanged a firm handshake, completing our charade. 2 weeks later, my lawyer reported things were likely to go smoothly. Indeed, I had been staying at my in-laws and making my next move. First, I called the neighbor Nancy, who discovered the situation, asking for detailed descriptions of when the two were rescued. Nancy is a gossip lover and skilled in quickly spreading what she sees and hears. I had always maintained a good relationship to avoid any bad rumors, but who knew it would come in handy like this?
Oh dear, a police car and an ambulance in a residential area? The place was crowded with onlookers. And your husband, well, how should I say?
I urged her to continue.
And that other woman. She smelled so bad. What did she eat to produce such a stench?
Upon revealing the woman was my sister.
That's shocking. So, your sister seduced your husband.
She sounded almost excited. So, I replied with a feigned and strong voice.
It seems to be the case.
While she expressed sympathy, her excitement was unmistakable. Thanks to her, I knew there were many witnesses to the affair. My words about the neighbors watching would spread quickly among them. Next, I sought a lawyer for the divorce and to get a restraining order against Linda. I couldn't stand the sight of Michael. I decided to settle everything through the lawyer. What about going home? Lisa asked.
Thieves broke into our house.
I explained. Well, they were thieves, in a way.
Thieves took Dad away.
She tilted her head, seemingly confused. She had lost expectations and familiarity with a father who'd stopped playing with her. Meanwhile, Michael's incessant calls were unrelenting. Ignoring them, I recorded his voicemails. Apparently, he broke his back in the fall and had to be hospitalized. According to my in-laws, both Linda and Michael smelled terrible.
I'm utterly disappointed at Michael,
lamented Michael's mother Mia, who fiercely lectured them in the hospital. George also disgusted and considered severing ties with him. Their scolding probably fueled the flood of messages from Michael.
What's this? I'm hurt. Why aren't you showing up? Did you lock me in? A lawyer came, divorce? No way. What? Lisa locked the door. Hey. Why is there a video circulating online? Did you do something? Fine, I'll agree to the divorce, but isn't the expense too much? Please, I beg you. Can't you lower the compensation? Nobody wants to buy the house with the basement in this state. Please, just answer the phone once.
His voice was tearful toward the end. I do get calls from Linda. But since it's just incomprehensible ranting, I turn the volume down as soon as I recognize her voice. I can't let Lisa hear such foul language. On the other hand, Nick managed to contact his biological father.
Mom never gave me his cell number, but Grandma had told me the home phone number.
She said to call it in case of an emergency.
Emergency?
Yeah. Grandma was really upset she couldn't get custody from Mom. She said there was something missing back then, and I ended up going with Mom. I see. But after what happened this time, I think she's definitely not fit to be a parent anymore. I hope that's the case. He said with determination in his voice. Mom always complained about my housework. Even so, she wouldn't help me.
Really?
Yeah, thanks to that, I can do many things by myself, though. I couldn't help but feel sorry for him.
My real dad was against it, so just for that, I've always wanted to go with him.
He said.
I see.
So, thank you for giving me this chance.
I should thank you. You know, your mom always liked to take things that were mine.
He looked up to the sky.
But you know, it's not about things, it's about people. You can't get caught up in that. At least he has a family, he shouldn't be tempted. He's no good otherwise.
I continued to him.
Therefore, we both got rid of something bad and feel refreshed, don't we?
As for the two of them, my divorce went through. I got full custody of Lisa, and it was decided I would receive property distribution, compensation, and child support. Michael decided to sell the dream house to make payments. But the house, especially the basement, was in such a bad state, so it got lowballed.
See? I say he is foolish. He is supposed to make studios and studies after the kids move out.
His father George said. But Michael's parents both still want to see their grandchild. I've been well taken care of by them, so I plan to keep in touch. Meanwhile, Linda and our parents were furious after being sued for compensation in the divorce. When my lawyer said to Linda,
"By the way, Jane has renounced her inheritance. She wants nothing to do with you. If you do anything rash, she'll get a restraining order."
Then unbelievably, she grabbed a vase and struck him with it. That's clearly assault, so she was charged and ended up behind bars for a short time. Our parents also had to sell their house to pay the additional compensation. That's what they get for spoiling her.
"Mom, I'm off."
I'm leaving too. After that, I moved a bit further away. To a place far from my parents' house and the house I used to live in. Good morning, I say as I arrive at work.
"Hi, how are you?"
My current employer responds. He's Nick's father. I'm currently employed as an office worker at his company. It's not a big company, but it's a sincere business rooted in the community. On days off, Lisa asks to visit Nick at his father's place. They're grateful to me for giving Nick the chance to return. They are far better people than my own parents. Finally, days with people I can feel at peace with have arrived. From now on, I plan to live brightly and happily, mainly for Lisa's sake.